I'm going to do a formal welcome, right? Which,
Okay.
and it's really funny. I keep thinking about this as our interview's coming up. It's like so much has changed since I first started all of this.
Uh-huh.
So, in fact, I don't think I did a, hey, Conrad Jones, welcome to my podcast, you know, um, and here we are again. Uh, you were my first interview, very first interview. Had you known that, you may have said no, right? Like, what in the world is this guy gonna do? 120 interviews later, here we are, and it's been a blast along the way. But I look back at those first interviews, and first of all, I was so grateful that everybody had given me the time and the opportunity to do this. So, um, well, August, I think, I'm trying to remember the exact date. August of 2018 is when we sat down for the first
Mhm.
time to talk. A little bit has changed in that amount of time. I mean, that's an understatement of understatements. Um, you've certainly solidified yourself in the Indianapolis music scene and as principal trumpet of the ISO. And then 2020 hits, and it's like, what the heck, right? I mean, it disrupts everything. So, I'd like to try to catch up on what's happened in the last couple of years. Maybe focus a little bit on the pandemic, but more about like what's come out of the pandemic. Like you mentioned, this duo with Riley,
Mhm.
and let's start. Actually, let's start there. Since the ISO is shut down for the foreseeable future, you've engaged in a little chamber music. I shouldn't say little. You've engaged in a chamber music endeavor with Riley. I forget his last name.
Jim Paulo.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the duo that we have, we sort of unofficially started it actually in spring of 2017, but it sort of was the kind of thing that began as just a fundraiser for one of the ISO volunteer organizations, and then we were like, oh, this is actually really fun to do, and we have similar tastes in music and styles and things like that. And it was like, oh, maybe there's something here. We can do education stuff, perform recitals, and we ended up doing a few more of these fundraiser type things, and kind of would just plug them into our schedule, as we could, thinking maybe someday down the road we could really invest some serious time in this. And then, of course, like you mentioned, March 2020 hits, and um, I don't think immediately I was like, oh, sweet, global pandemic. Now's the perfect time to, dig into the two Gabagools brass duo. But I think once the initial shock wave and depression and weird motivational ups and downs and all the challenges that I think many people in some way or another went through in that like March, April, May kind of moment, we were sort of thinking like, this could be a really great thing and time for us to invest in this group, because at the very least, since there's no real repertoire for trumpet and bass trombone specifically anyways, this is a really good moment in time to invest in arranging and all that sort of grunt work to allow us to hopefully someday either plug this back into our schedule naturally when the ISO is kind of up and running, or just have a lot of material to work from in the next 5, 10, 15 years, whatever we want to do. So that was sort of one of the first things that kind of popped up and kicked into high gear pretty early on in this pandemic.
But it sounds
Um,
like the beginnings of that were pre-pandemic.
they were, yeah. I mean, we kind of had it cooking for a little while, and then it sort of went into high gear once the pandemic hit. And then the stuff that was sort of brand new as of the pandemic 2020 was everything that was a little bit more community based and like for larger ensembles. So um, although the Gabagool thing we didn't really like kick into full steam until closer to June, it did occur to me very, very early on, once this whole thing hit, like, oh man, everybody's going to be struggling in one way or the other. But as much as musicians or artists or people like that might be struggling, I mean, the community at large and the people that might already be in sort of a tough spot, whether it's homelessness or something else like that, are really going to be suffering during this time. So I kind of tried to divert a lot of energy to finding ways to get musicians engaged to sort of support that portion of the community kind of first, just because I think that was also a way for me to help stay sane and healthy, or as healthy as you can stay when like everything's hitting the fan, you know. So I'm sure you can relate in some way to how that felt early on with the uncertainty and everything. So, you know, we started doing like a brass band thing with, you know, people that are usually known to be, you know, classical players. But as you know, from all the time you spent with the symphony and stuff, there's quite a few really versatile musicians in our ranks. So we were really able to do a lot of stuff, everything from brass quintets to, you know, like New Orleans style brass bands, and, you know, tried to find ways to raise money for people in town, and just give also live concerts. Because I think in some weird way, live music can be a positive thing, even beyond its usual call in a moment like this. So
I want to come back to that, but before I forget, Gabagool.
oh yeah,
You got to spell it out so I can truly understand what, and then explain the name, where that came from.
so the spelling Gabagool, and basically it's slang for capicola ham. So it's basically like a East Coast Italian slang for deli meat. But what's funny about this is, you know, Riley and I sort of were trying to come up with, like, you know, just a reasonable professional sounding name for our group, because we were starting to do some more recitals outside of just Indianapolis, and we're like, we should probably have some title for us. So we were like mucking around with like the indie duo, or like something that was like kind of like not cheesy, but just like professional sounding.
Right.
And nothing was really sticking to the wall. And so in the meantime, we were just jokingly calling ourselves, oh, we're just a bunch of knuckleheads, like just two Gabagools, just trying to figure out our thing. And so we would kind of refer to ourselves, like our group, as that, mostly because like we love the Sopranos. We're both heavily Italian. And also we love The Office too. And there's this hilarious episode where Michael Scott has this whole run-in at like the equivalent of an Olive Garden trying to order Gabagool at like in the, you know. And so that's sort of how this name came to be. And then honestly, it just sort of stuck like accidentally. It was just, we ended up having to use a name for stuff, and everything else felt like not genuine. And we just rolled. We're like, all right, well, the two Gabagools it is. And so here we are.
That's awesome. Isn't it, you know, interesting to know the genesis of a name like that? And, you know, you kind of wonder, like Smashing Pumpkins or Nine Inch Nails, or, you know, bands like that. It's like, where in the world, you know, did they come up with that? So okay, so thanks for the detour on that. Let's go back though. You mentioned you know, performing live, and Owensboro Symphony, a group that I'm part of, we actually did our first thing of the season last weekend.
Oh, nice.
And it was we videotaped our brass quintet videotaped a 5-minute Christmas segment that's going to air in December. And then the next day, there were like 6 chamber groups out on a long Broadway. So there was a stroll, and the groups were spaced apart, but the community could come out. It was a free event. It was packed. And as much fun as the audience had, I think the musicians had just as much, if not more, enjoyment that we were actually together again, even if it wasn't as a full symphony. You know, that proximity, right? Not just on the computer screen again, but actually sitting socially distanced from each other, you know, but still able to make music. And what a great feeling that was, you know. So when you talk about that, I think, you know, we're all hungry for that live experience, the patrons and the musicians.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yes.
Totally.
So okay, so now my interest in Gabagools is it 2 Gabagools or just Gabagools?
We just go as the 2 Gabagools.
The 2 Gabagools. So, you said you guys had like interest in music. What is that? Is that classical or rock, or what is it?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of a little bit of everything. And I know that's sort of a broad answer, but, you know, Riley and I both, we both grew up listening to and actually playing like a lot of rock music and pop music and jazz. And that overlaps sort of with our more traditional classical background. And it's sort of, you know, it's sort of rare to run into people, you know, especially that are like within your own symphony orchestra, that have both an interest in that music, but also like a feel for that music and the ability to like really play that kind of stuff with a convincing style and like sort of authenticity. And so, you know, I mean, his dad is a professional, you know, like the piano bar singer kind of people at like
Yeah.
Howl the Moon and things like that. So yeah, so he grew up playing guitar with his dad and doing like top 40 tunes and all that kind of stuff. And then I grew up as, you know, more of a jazz player anyways in the first place. And all this sort of love of all styles of music has kind of overlapped, which is why we ended up doing everything from like Simon and Garfunkel and Beatles tunes to, you know, Latin music and a little bit of jazz here and there and some classical stuff. And we've been trying to arrange, you know, a little bit more specific just to us, since this is a, you know, kind of a unique opportunity to say, okay, we're going to arrange music knowing who's exactly playing it on the other end. So we'll listen to, you know, a piano piece and try to curate it for our particular abilities, or in often my case, lack of abilities, you know, trying to just come up with ways to play stuff on a trumpet and perform a, you know, I mean, you know how this goes, like performing a duo recital with no piano. I mean, that's all, you're really engaged chop wise for like
Yeah,
a
right.
full hour plus. So coming up with creative ways to make sure my chops aren't dead halfway through, you know, things like that are all sort of part of the challenge.
So is obviously it works. You've got arrangements, but are you doing these arrangements yourself, or have you hired somebody out?
We are doing them ourselves. There's also a friend of mine. I don't know if, did you ever meet Hayato Tanaka in Indianapolis? He's played with the ISO a couple times for some random things over the years, but he's a really close friend of mine and principal trumpet in the Tucson
Oh,
Symphony.
yes.
Yeah. And so he's also kind of done some work with us on some arrangements here and there. And we're basically sort of just learning as we go with this thing. I mean, I've arranged a little bit over the years, but I'm not like a consummate orchestrator or anything like that. So we're sort of just faking it till we make it in this department and just seeing what
Yeah.
we can come up with. And, you know, some things have definitely had more success than others. And there's a handful of things that, you know, haven't made it to see the light of day outside of our living room kind of vibe. But
You know, you're probably familiar with these, but Håkan Hardenberger and Christian Lindberg had some really fantastic trumpet, trombone, and piano
yeah,
arrangements that were back in I think it was late 80s, mid to late 80s.
yep, all that like Carmen and all those fun
Yeah.
Mozart things, right? Yeah,
La Forza del
yep.
Destino, right? The overture to that, which Blake and I are going to try to do on a U Indy recital
Oh,
if it
nice.
happens. So, um, but you know, okay, so trumpet and tenor trombone, I can see that because I've heard that, but it's like
Yeah,
trumpet and bass trombone. You might as well get a chainsaw to partner with, right? Because it's like, well, I'm not comparing him to a chainsaw, but I'm just thinking, okay, now you're another octave apart. It just, so I know the challenges are there. You're obviously overcoming and meeting those challenges.
yeah. We've got tons of stuff. Mostly because actually in June during this sort of quarantine situation, the ISO, instead of Symphony on the Prairie, started this radio show, Symphony on the Patio, and the two Gabagools were actually the first of
Ah,
these 9 radio shows. And so basically we were tasked with coming up with like 45 minutes of recorded music in like 3 days. And so Riley and I were like, yikes, we better just get recording. So we recorded this radio show in my living room, and we ended up doing a ton of different things, and it was definitely cutting it close to the wire, but because of this we have like a handful of recent things sort of on hand.
nice.
But you know, I think, I mean, I'll speak for I guess myself, and I don't want to embarrass him too much, but in my opinion, the reason why this has more of a chance to work than you would maybe otherwise assume with a bass trombone is luckily because not only is Riley's normal style a little bit less chainsawy than the
Yeah,
stereotypical
and
bass
forgive me for
trombonist.
using that.
No, I know what you mean, but you know,
Yeah,
he's really kind of a freak of nature on his instrument. So the fact that he can sort of play so low and also so high with such facility, it actually gives us a tremendous amount of range of just like style and color and different things like that. And it's
right.
like kind of horrifying some of the stuff that like I'll write and I'll be like, oh, this probably won't work because who can play this? And then we'll play it. And then of course I'm the one struggling and he's like, oh yeah, this feels great, you know? Um, so I think we're lucky in the fact that he's just so good. So that gives us a chance,
Yeah.
you know, to hang in there and sort of try some stuff that otherwise might not be possible.
And flugelhorn blends pretty well too, I'd imagine.
It does, yeah. And we've done quite a bit of flugel and trumpet stuff. One of our more recent ones was we did Leonard Bernstein's Simple Song from his Mass for bass trombone and flugelhorn, and stuff like that. It was sort of that 50-50, like, is this gonna actually work? And then, I think as much as it can on two non-choral instruments, it sort of kind of holds up, and again, just because he can literally play like piano parts somehow on his trombone, it's kind of crazy.
So it just popped into my head. Do either of you use multiphonics?
We don't, but that's probably something that's worth exploring. I mean, to say the least. I mean,
when you said non-chordal,
yeah.
it made me think, that's because of people like Rex Richardson. Now, some composers and arrangers think that everybody can do this, right? So, maybe they don't include it in everything, thank goodness. But it's funny. I interviewed Zach DePew just a week or so ago,
awesome.
And didn't realize the connection between the two of you.
Yeah.
But hearing how Time for Three got their start, really that kind of that big break in Philadelphia the night the lights went out, that story that he told, it's like, you got to have your stuff ready, right? But they only had two members of the group. I think Nick was off at another festival, so it was him and Renan that had to play the Time for Three program that night. So, but I'm thinking, you're kind of at that same point. You've got this, you had it ready. You've got this repertoire, and who knows where this is gonna go. I mean, I can't wait to hear some of these arrangements. I think it's going to be fantastic. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. What's it like to practice when your main gig, it doesn't exist for the moment? What are you doing, and besides this group, what are you doing to maintain that orchestral focus?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I'm not even sure I still know the answer to that. But I feel like when I look back on the last handful of months, like since March, it's really been a way up and down type trajectory in this particular department. I mean, at first, I think I was just kind of trying to figure out, okay, well, it seems like we might be playing soon, or we might need to record stuff. I don't even know what's going on. And this is where our instrument really affects the way we get through a pandemic, because I mean, every instrument has its struggles, but trumpet in a pandemic doesn't have the luxury of like taking 5 days off and then just picking it up and then recording a brass ensemble thing because somebody asked you to, and then you just play Fanfare for the Common Man after like 7 days off. I mean, it doesn't really work the same way for us. So at first I was just kind of staying in shape in my usual way, sort of in a weird, like, well, this is strange, but that underlying motivation of the instrument just not letting you dip too far just because of the sheer endurance demands kind of keeps you practicing. I mean, you can also choose to take time off and choose to have enough time to get back in shape, of course, but at first, at least I was kind of maybe staying afloat because of that. And then as this thing cruised on, I was like, man, I'm going to need to like get into something new or add something to my usual, because without those playing demands, you're not met 50-50 with a schedule. You're like 100% responsible for what you're engaging, And so I was talking with friends and former teachers, and my teacher, Mike Miller, who I studied with at the Cleveland Institute of Music, who has given me tons of gold mine routines over the years, including my Miller Arbin one that I have been doing since 2009. We were chatting, and he cooked up this Clark routine sort of just for this pandemic, like, I'm going to take a book that I sort of never really dove into the way that maybe it seems like trumpet players should, and I'm going to just come up with this like 6-week long kind of comprehensive, half-hour thing out of the Clark book. And so he passed that on to me, and I ended up getting into that for a while. And that's sort of the more trumpet technical kind of answer. But I don't know, man. I mean, it's the orchestra thing. I'm sure I haven't lost my spot. It's probably in there somewhere. But I think unless you're really doing that and filling up a room like that and covering that wide range of volume, I mean, you can recreate it as much as you want at home, but it's still never going to be fully the same. So I'm definitely like been staying in shape through, you know, quintet size things or duo stuff. Like I mean, I'm still like playing a ton, but I'm sure whenever the first week back in an orchestra playing something big is, it's going to be like kind of riding a bike, but you're really struggling to pedal, you know, for a little while.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we can all relate to that in a way, but I mean, especially early on, it was really nuts. I mean, some weeks you'd have a day where you just literally don't feel like getting up off the couch. And then other days you try to be motivated, but then there's this weird energy in the room because the whole world is like crumbling. I mean, it was really weird, you know. I think yeah. So I'm just trying to claw my way.
I felt so bad for you and the ISO as an entire group, but the week that things shut down was Mahler 5. I mean, did I understand it right? You at least got a rehearsal or two in?
Yeah, we did a couple rehearsals. And then right after the dress rehearsal, I think, maybe, I forget what it was, whatever it was like right before the first concert, everything shut down. And I remember we got the memo about this maybe Thursday night before the Friday show. So and my mom was actually in town. She had flown in like before we knew any of this was going on.
Yeah.
She was going to check out Mahler 5. And then, you know, everything like really hits the fan. And she's like, wow, I got to get back to New York, you know, safely somehow. And
Right.
so Thursday night we got the memo, and so we just decided to do a fat Italian blowout. So we like made fresh pasta, drinking wine, eating cheese, all this stuff. Then I wake up Friday morning and the symphony's like, hey, can you just come to the hall by yourself? It's empty. Can you just like record the opening of Mahler 5 and maybe some other excerpts and just like give a little, you know, we're sorry the concerts are canceled type thing. And I remember waking up in the morning after eating all that salt and ham and salami, all that stuff, like, all right, I guess I do have to dust this off and squirt it out anyway, at least under some kind of pressure. But yeah, it was wild. Just everything just boom, just like that, toast, you know.
Was that your first Mahler 5? Would that have been your first one?
It would have been my second Mahler 5 as principal, and then I played it a handful of times. I played third trumpet, I think maybe 3 or 4 times, and then fourth once and second one, you know. But it was going to be my first Mahler 5 playing principal since January 2014 or 15, something like that.
And you were feeling pretty good about it too, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you kind of do the best you can to kind of get into that zone. But for sure, I definitely had been really ramping up. I mean, any week like Mahler 5 or Pictures or Zarathustra or anything where there's like Petrushka, anything, even if you feel good about your fundamentals or your approach to the piece, any big trumpety thing always has that little extra adrenaline in the room, whether, I mean, that's like an undeniable just fact of the job. And so any week like that, even if it's something like Pictures that last season, if everything wasn't canceled, it would have been a weird year where I would have played Pictures 4 times. But every single time, even on a season like that, there's still that extra bump that you have to be prepared to just stay calm, cool, and collected, like under. And so I always have all these mental extra routines that I sort of boost into my week. So for Mahler 5, I was definitely in the full throes of my normal extra sort of mental zone practice kind of stuff that I do. And so that was weird to just be like super ramping up for that. And then all of a sudden, like global pandemic, and now you're just like chilling at home kind of vibe. So.
Yeah. How long have you been in Indy now? How many years?
So this, so would I be starting I moved to Indy August of 2016. So I guess this would have been, I would have been starting my 5th season this fall, which is kind of wild to say that out loud. It's kind of been flying.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. So Indianapolis as an art scene, give me your take on what you see and what you feel around town outside of the pandemic.
Okay. Well, you know, I guess sort of in a weird way, what the pandemic has brought about, I think actually represents a lot of how I feel about the art scene here anyways. And just seeing the sort of versatility and like willingness of musicians in Indianapolis, that's something I think I was always noticing in normal life, and in a weird way I don't think was even able to tap into as much as I would have hoped, just because of my day job. But the pandemic has really illuminated just how resilient and flexible and willing and caring sort of this community is. And I know that that's a little bit of a general answer, but I think you kind of know what I mean in terms of just sort of what we talked about the last time, I think. But it's like, it really is a sort of treasure chest of great people and players in this city in a way that you might not assume on paper. And I think that's just been proven and fortified in this recent climate a little bit.
Well, and I'm constantly reminded of the variety of music. Like, it's not just classical and jazz. I mean, the bluegrass, the Celtic scene, you know, and probably many others that I'll edit those in that I can remember. But, you know, it's just like, holy cow, you mean that style of music exists here in Indy? And not just exist, but it thrives, you know? And, but you're right. It's like everybody's kind of stepped up. I don't know that I want driveway concerts to become the norm, but it is kind of cool, you know, while we're in what we're in. But yeah, I think a lot of people are hoping to get back to the clubs and the Hilbert Circle Theater type settings and do their thing. But so are you teaching in the interim? Are you doing anything outside of working on the duo?
Yeah, you know, I haven't really added too much teaching to my plate than usual. Other than there's a friend of mine in New York who started an additional teaching job in a public school district, and because of the insanity of the challenges of that, especially near New York City, he has a really big trumpet studio, and so I'm teaching a couple of his students just for like a month or two, just to kind of give him a little of a buffer. And I mean, he's helping me out a little bit as well in that way. But outside of that, I'm just teaching my normal, you know, couple high school kids. And then I'll do the occasional, you know, Zoom lesson for a college age or somebody, you know, like that. But yeah, just doing virtual stuff. Just, I mean, you know, everything's changing so constantly with the virus and all that stuff. You know, in terms of like younger students, I'm just erring on the safe side just for them or me, whatever, just doing virtual. But you know, and actually on the bright side, there's definitely some serious downsides to virtual teaching, especially because oftentimes especially a brass instrument where you can't see anything for the most part, you know, we really learn a lot through sound, and we lose that a lot on this Zoom type situation. However, I think that the nature of this virtual connection has actually made the relationships with students a little bit, I don't want to say it's like more comfortable to be in more frequent contact, but there's something about the casualness of this. It's not like a stiff, see you at 1 p.m., you know, in my home studio at like on Wednesday. It's a little bit more of this casual, like scheduling lessons. And so I'm finding I'm emailing with students and sending recordings, and it's a little bit more communicative in a way that I hope is helpful. Like, oh, hey, check this out. I just thought of this that we talked about yesterday. And then the student will write back or text back, or they'll send a video of, is this what you were talking about? And that's maybe a positive thing to come out of sort of breaking down this sort of traditional wall of a traditional lesson. So I'm just trying to find any way possible to keep people engaged, because I'm telling you, I mean, we all know how hard it is to just stay motivated to just play an instrument as professional musicians, but I can't imagine being like sapped of my high school band rehearsals or jazz band or all those things that really help you propel at a time where, I mean, I didn't want to practice my trumpet when I was 15. I mean, I really didn't. And I was lucky to have good teachers and good ensembles to play in to keep me engaged until I got to that point where I was insanely committed. But up until then, I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine what I would have done. So I'm trying to do my best to just be there, for as cheesy as that sounds, for my students if I can, you know.
Well, you know, technology, I mean, the advancements since March have been great. And of course, everybody started to invest in better microphones and setups with all that. But YouTube's been around for a long time. And so even my college students, who I keep trying, you know, years past, I've sent them, I say, you need to go listen to this person. You need to go listen to this person, listen to this specific video. Well, this year I decided, that it's part of their lesson. So each week they all have the exact same artist that they have to listen to, and it's part of their grade. So, you know, there was a little bit of hesitation at first, but in the last couple of weeks, and they have to turn in a written summary in their own words of what they observe. You know, it's very subjective. Mm-hmm. But in the last couple of weeks, what I've gotten from these students is, wow, you know, I really like, you can tell that they're starting to get into it and they're listening more discerningly, you know, and so here I'm thinking, okay, this is something good that's coming out of this, even though it's existed for, you know, for them forever. They're finally taking advantage of it. You know, it's like you and I and many others. How many trips did we make to the listening library to check out records and tapes and CDs and whatever? Yeah. But yeah, I'm thrilled that and I'm giving them a wide variety. You know, Allison Balsam, Timofey Dockschitzer, Sergey, Ryan Anthony, you know, trying to give them the young, the old to listen to. So sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but I was really excited about it, you know, because they're actually doing something, you know, I think that's going to help. It's that listening, right? That's going to inspire them, I think, as much as
for sure.
anything. So, well, man, I can't wait for us all to get back into whatever the new norm is going to be. And I'm glad to know that you're healthy and doing well. And, you know, yeah, and thanks again for the time. You know, it's been a little over 2 years since the first time we spoke. And I was thinking about that first interview. I was talking about teaching and pedagogy. That's where I thought everything was going to be. And it, of course, changed course pretty quickly after that. But no, I appreciate, you know, bringing me up to date on what you're doing and how things are going. And you have a website yet?
Yeah, working on it. We got a couple things underway right now where we're looking at some educational type grant applications and different things like this. And that's been kicking us into gear a little bit with some of that stuff. So we're kind of actually just this week, even now that you mention it, we have sort of that side of things starting to take shape, you know, Instagram and the website and, you know, different things like this. And I think this year for sure will become sort of the year that we try to just do all the groundwork that hopefully we can then tap into. Because I think in theory, what we'd love to do is just have everything ready to roll so that we can continue this once things kind of pick back up with the orchestra or wherever. Because I mean, you know how it goes. Like once the world is actually kind of back to normal, I mean, this has been weirdly busy, this pandemic, mostly just because of when you're self-producing concerts or whatever, you're on your email in a different way than usual. But yeah, once things pick back up, you know, you don't have the luxury of just arranging a bass trombone and trumpet duo for like 7 days straight. You know what I mean? So yeah, we're kind of,
Conrad, man, thanks for joining me again for this. I really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing you on stage again sometime soon.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's great to see you again, even virtually, and happy to be back on the podcast. It's been pretty awesome to see how far it's gone since, you know, our first episode.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well,
great to see you.
Great to see you. Yeah, thanks, Larry. Yeah. This is looking forward to checking it out when it comes out, and I've been enjoying all the other ones in the meantime.
Cool. Thanks, man. So, all right.
Awesome.
Well, cheers. I'll see you around sometime.
Yep. See you soon.